All right, new USDA, well, I guess it's still a pyramid, just upside down. New USDA dietary guidelines. We shall analyze the old pyramid, the new one, what they did, and then talk a little bit more about diet, take it a step further. But before we get into that, I just want to say that I don't know what adjective to put here. Am I disappointed? Am I amused? Is this hilarious? I don't know. But the fact that RFK Jr. had to sit on a stage and just tell America, eat real food, guys. Like, just eat real food. It's part sad, but that's the state of things. We have been so misled for so many decades about how to eat a proper diet and feed our bodies that it's like RFK Jr. and Marty Makary of the FDA, they had to just sit on a stage at a press conference and talk to 350 million Americans like they're 5-year-olds, telling them to eat real food. Anyway, here we are. Their new pyramid is far superior, but in terms of dietary advice, of course, it is for the collective. But the thing is, each of us are individuals. So it's good general advice, but there is an individuated approach that each person needs to specify with themselves. We'll talk about that in a minute. Anyway, the old pyramid, let's start there. Old pyramid came out in 1992, I believe, USDA dietary guidelines. And the old pyramid was always trash. It was fairly evident, fairly obvious that the old USDA dietary guidelines were influenced very heavily by the multinational food corporations. Probably Kellogg, General Mills, particularly the wheat, corn, and soy producers, heavily influenced the old dietary guidelines to brainwash people to think they need way more grains than they really do, and that, oh my gosh, fat is bad. 6 to 11 servings of grains per day in the old advice. Most people do not need that. No wonder we have obesity running rampant in society. Then they suggested, 3 to 5 servings of veg, 3 to 5 of fruit, a couple servings of meat, and eat your sweets sparingly. Here's the thing about this. There is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. There are essential amino acids. There are a handful of amino acids our bodies can't manufacture, so they're referred to as EAAs, essential amino acids. There are essential fats, EFAs, essential fatty acids. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Granted, some people, due to their activity level, due to their situation, their environment, their metabolism, etc., they could definitely benefit from having carbs in their diet. I'm not demonizing carbs here. I eat carbs, but 6 to 11 servings, the average American, quite sedentary, driving cars a lot, sitting at desks a lot, on their couches, 6 to 11 servings for the average American. Again, no wonder we have such rampant obesity. And then, of course, the demonization of fats, kind of in general, but saturated fats and general fats. And then the thing about eating sweets sparingly is that most grain bought in big box store shelves is basically glorified sweets with high fructose corn syrup, with added sugar into the boxed product, or the grain itself is highly refined and spikes insulin just like somebody is eating a tablespoon of white sugar. So it's white bread or super refined cereals with added sugars. So eat sweets sparingly? Most people do not, even though they think they do, but the products they're choosing to eat just doing numbers on their insulin. So our new food pyramid has turned that pyramid upside down. And the thing about this new pyramid is that it has this demarcation line right here, whereby the grain, now still at the bottom, but at the pointy end of the pyramid, the tiny bit amount, it has this demarcation line there. And I like that because it kind of subconsciously tells people, like, separate grains away from the real food. And they don't really have in the rest of the pyramid the meats and fruits and veg and dairy separated. It's all kind of together because the whole point of this new pyramid is eat real food. Again, RFK Jr. on that stage. Eat real food, America. So you've got in the top left your fish, your eggs, your meat, your dairy, your animal-based foods. And then in the top left, you have your plant-based foods, your fruits and veggies, and then down here, just a bit of grain. You don't need much grain. Maybe if you do need some carbs, because again, activity level or metabolism, you can get that from grains or fruit or honey. So there you go. That's our new pyramid. And along with the announcement of this pyramid, you had RFK Jr., FDA director, USDA director, all get on stage and basically explicitly hit home the point that eat real food. And federal health agency advice will no longer be bought and paid for by special interest of multinational food producers, which that's the most important thing. I think FDA Director Marty Makary very adamantly said that for decades, fats have been demonized because federal health agencies have so much lobby money coming to them from the big food producers. So anyway, great new advice. JERF, acronym that I've been saying for 10 years, just eat real food. I've been saying this for a long, long time, as have many others in the alternative nutrition industry or community, and that's exactly what the government's, what RFK Jr.'s announcement entailed here. Eat real food. They plastered that right on their posters for this new pyramid, and many of us have been saying that for a long, long time. JERF. Okay, that's analyzing that. Let's get into a little bit more of diet discussion with some suggestions that I personally have. Number one, if you want to be healthy, eat like a bodybuilder. So the thing about bodybuilders is that what they do is, but you want to take it a step further than what the bodybuilding fitness industry does. We'll talk about that in a sec. What they do is track. So whether you use a notebook, I'm more partial to the old school, write everything down by hand, or you use an app, MyFitnessPal, or there's 1,000 out there, get into the habit of tracking your macros, and then from knowing your macros, you can add that up into your calories per day. So macronutrients, protein, fat, carbs. Protein and carbs, 4 calories per gram, fat, 9 calories per gram. And then once you get customized, or you can memorize the general macronutrient content of an average piece of food, average serving, then the goal is to not necessarily even need to track. It just becomes intuitive. You can think back through your day and think, ooh, I ate an egg. I know an egg has about 6 grams of protein. I had an apple. I know an apple has about 25 grams of carbs. I had half a pound of ground beef. I know per pound of ground beef, 80-20, it's got about 80, 90 grams of protein, so ate half a pound of that. I had 40 grams of protein from my half a pound of ground beef. So it becomes intuitive for you. And you become robotic. That's the thing that bodybuilders do, is that they track everything, they become robotic, and they prep. And if you start prepping your own food, then you're not A, spending as much money out at the restaurants or doing takeout or DoorDash, and B, you know what you're eating. It saves you time because you're not cooking every day. You're cooking every 2 or 3 days, and you're doing the same general thing every single day. You know what you're going to eat. You can plan for it. You can buy it, prep it, and then you know exactly the caloric intake per day, and then you can set a baseline for yourself. Is your goal to lose weight? You can have your caloric intake be right under your resting metabolic rate so you can, over time, lose weight, or maybe you're trying to gain weight, just like the bodybuilder, right? The bodybuilders make sure their calories are right under their daily metabolic rate, or just above, whether they're trying to lose weight or gain weight. So, eat like a bodybuilder or fitness person. Becomes a lot easier, actually saves you money, and by tracking your macros, you can handle your weight. But what bodybuilders or fitness influencers often don't do is, because they're so focused on aesthetics and look, all they track are macros, but they don't track micros. You find a lot of protein bars in the bodybuilding industry, 90% of them are trash, or all the bodybuilders will eat for carbs is white rice or rice cakes. All they care about is their macros to hit their calories so they can usually lose weight or gain weight. They don't care about micronutrients. So if you want actual health and vitality, if you want to maximize that, when you're picking your foods to get your macros and calories in, focus on the foods that have the most micronutrients. That's your vitamins, your minerals, your enzymes, your probiotics, your antioxidants, etc., right? There's far better sources of carbohydrates than rice cakes. Sources of carbs that will actually come with fiber and vitamins and minerals, etc. So that's the tip there. Focus on the micronutrients as well as the macros. Number 2, follow what your ancestors do, right? There's a huge debate. Is veganism better? Is carnivore better? Me, I don't like either of them because they're too extreme. Granted, depending on the situation, maybe I'd go carnivore for a bit, or maybe I'd go vegan for a bit. But I wouldn't do that long term forever. I wouldn't slap a diet label on myself and say, I am a vegan or I am a carnivore. I wouldn't identify with that. Things change, situations change. So for a general rule of thumb, you can look into the work of Weston A. Price. About 100 years ago, he traveled around the world and studied the diets of indigenous people and found that no indigenous people were full vegan, and none of them were really full carnivore, I guess aside from maybe the Eskimos, but pretty much all of them had a varying omnivorous diet, and they were just so focused on eating real food because they were indigenous people. They didn't have processing. And then building upon the work of Weston A. Price, there's a book that came out about 30 years ago called the Metabolic Typing Diet. I forget the name of the author, but it's called the Metabolic Typing Diet, came out about 30 years ago. And the author of this built upon the work of Weston A. Price. And he was studying that most people with their particular metabolisms are set based upon essentially their generational genetics. So take your ancestry. Me, for example, I'm a very white guy. My ancestry is majority Scandinavian from Norway. What did my ancestors eat for hundreds or thousands of years in Norway? They ate mainly fish, livestock, a little bit of fruit and vegetables during the growing season. Growing season's pretty short. So typically what this book describes, and Weston A. Price and other work into dieting, proper dieting, is that your ancestry will influence what your metabolism, what your body best utilizes. So polar peoples, white peoples, usually do better with higher protein, high fat. Your equatorial, more typically dark-skinned folks, do better with higher fruits. Because of course in the equatorial regions, a lot more fruit grows with more glucose. So darker skin, more equatorial ancestral folks can do better with their body processing those kinds of simple glucose, higher fruits. The white people do better with higher fats, high protein. But granted, again, it's not extreme. You're not only doing that. But that's just kind of a general rule of thumb. You can go check out that book and those ideas. Now, my personal regimen, just lastly here, what I do to eat real food and somewhat follow my ancestors, but not to a T, is I have 5 staples. So cans of sardines is one of them, and sometimes oysters. Another staple is ground beef and eggs, and I just cook all that together in the pan. I usually do the pound of ground beef with like 6 or 7 eggs and prep that. Lasts me 2 or 3 days. I really like cottage cheese and fruit. Typically like pineapple, blueberries, dried raisins. So cottage cheese and fruit bowl. Big fan of raw milk. And then I usually get my veg from juicing. I'm a big fan of juicing. And you might say, Jordan, how do you get your fiber? Why do you juice the vegetables? You need that fiber. I get plenty of fiber from the chia seeds that I usually throw in my cottage cheese bowl. And I have a few other things I work into. Again, these are just like kind of daily staples for me in my diet. Makes it real easy. I can prep that for a few days. These just come in cans. Open the can. That requires very little prepping. All I have to do is like cut the pineapple every few days. Raw milk's already there. The juicing takes some work. but I do the juicing like twice a week. Not every day, but a few days out of the week. So I'm not spending that much time on cooking at all. I prep a lot of it. Some of it just comes already prepped. And there's a few other things I throw in sparingly. Bean noodles, black rice. There's some other foods that I do like to eat now and again, but it's really easy when you just boil down your diet to like basic things that are easy to find and get, and you don't have to cook all that much, and do the same robotic thing every single day. Now, once a week, if you want to have taco night or some burgers, once or twice a week, you can spend an hour or two cooking and have the family dinner and all of that, but doing that every day, a lot of time, a lot of money, and then your whole like macronutrient caloric count gets out of whack because, like every day I'm eating 3,000 calories. Oh my gosh, I'm gaining weight. Well, getting into the robotic prepping sort of mindset where you're tracking everything, tracking to a point where it becomes intuitive, then you don't have to track anymore and spend time writing it down or entering into the app. You already know, okay, my diet today is going to be this. I know I'm going to hit this many grams of protein, carbs, fat, and boom, it's super easy. But at the end of the day, the USDA dietary guidelines are a great start for a lot of people, but we talked a bit about the individuation that each of us kind of have to have some self-awareness with to find, and experiment too. The experimentation is important, but find what works best for us individually. Good start for the collective, then have some self-awareness, figure yourself out, experiment with some things, and figure out what works best for you. There's our video. Hey, if you want coaching, assistance, any kind of help with getting yourself into a good routine with nutrition or diet or supplementation, I have a lot of experience with supplements, or corrective exercise and posture, I invite you to go check out my Applied Awareness Private Health Coaching group. I'll leave a link in the description below. This is on the school platform. I have about 100 exclusive videos in there. I do weekly live calls, and then there is a group chat function where the community is constantly talking to each other and supporting each other and posting great information. So if you're interested in that coaching group, click the link below, go check it out. Otherwise, that is our video on the USDA guidelines.